Okay, so hello everyone. We are the Clean Bushwick Initiative team. My name is Celine, and the team includes Ben, Michael, Shubi, Jane, and Aldo. But before we dive into our deliverables, here's a recap on what the Clean Bushwick Initiative is and their purpose. So the organization is established in Bushwick, a neighborhood in Brooklyn. It is a working class neighborhood that is attached to a long history of community, class, industrial factories, railways, and so much more. And recently, Bushwick has been facing a sanitation crisis where pounds of trash has been cluttering the streets. So in 2016, the Clean Bushwick Initiative was created, dedicated to cleaning up streets to create a safer and healthier community. Um, a healthier community environment through organizing street and park cleanups, educational workshops, community outreach through social media, newsletters, and working with city leaders. They not only plan to resolve Bushwick's litter issue, but to just start a conversation on waste management and community accountability. So our project scope is essentially the development of 5 deliverables, which we split into 5 teams. These deliverables include the creation of a monthly newsletter, a complete research report to bring in a deeper understanding on the Clean Bushwick Initiative and how sanitation issues impact health, pollution, and community life, redesigning and creating new content for their website, creating an Instagram campaign to help spread awareness on proper waste management in Bushwick, and a sticker campaign to create community collaboration in keeping storefronts, sidewalks, and tree beds clean. So to quickly review how we've been working over the past few months, here's our project phases. In January, we met with the founders of the Clean Bushwick Initiative, Nicole and Kirsten, to define the scope of our deliverables. We were then able to split those deliverables into 2 to 3 person teams. In February, we began our initial background research and determined which community stakeholders we're targeting through our deliverable. And by March, we had completed a situational analysis and interviewed various community groups and leaders. And now in April, we have revised and updated our deliverables to include any edits from our client. And by the end of the month, we'll be submitting our final deliverables. And with that, I'll hand it off to my teammates on more on the deliverables.
Thanks, Celine. So first deliverable was the newsletter. This was targeted at really two groups. A lot of their volunteers are English speaking, so we developed an English speaking newsletter, and then also more outreach to the community with a Spanish speaking newsletter, since nearly half the population in Bushwick is Spanish speaking. Just to take you through what some of the content was for the newsletter, we included some sustainability tips, events, both upcoming, past, and then also like how to get involved, in particular the sticker campaign, which Aldo will cover as well, and highlighting some of the news and local artists from Bushwick, the community. So I just want to thank my teammates too, who came up with a lot of the content that went into this, and it was a great way for promoting community turnout and engaging more people in Bushwick.
And another part of our deliverable was a research report. And there were a few goals for this research report. First, it attempted to outline the historical forces that have contributed and kind of shaped the garbage issue on the ground in the first place. So some of the issues that we dove into were how the 1977 blackout destabilized the neighborhood, helping to kind of create a landscape more vulnerable to the garbage issue in the first place. We also looked at current gentrification trends and how the new construction to account for this gentrification is yielding more trash in the neighborhood. The second part of the report discussed the impact of COVID-19 and the associated Department of Sanitation budget cuts that resulted during the pandemic and how this exacerbated the garbage problem. And lastly, but probably most importantly, it talks about how current residents can get involved and be part of the solution proactively, and how cleaning up Bushwick can kind of be an opportunity to unify the community and bring people together, some of the older and newer residents in the neighborhood. As we built this report, we were able to gather quotes from a number of stakeholders in the community, including the local council member, Antonio Reynoso, as well as the chair of the community board, Celeste Leon, who was really a great resource and guided us in the right direction to find some of the historical information on Bushwick, which was super cool to read and learn about. And what we produced eventually was something that we felt was super visually appealing, with a lot of information packed in, but still not super dense in terms of the writing and the figures. And we think it demonstrated the context of the problem a lot better.
So one of the deliverables for our client Clean Bushwick initiative was the website. They had a public presence on the web space, but due to the limitation of the resources, they were not able to improvise it further. So together, we were assigned to work on this bit. To give a little logistic background, we have been working on the Squarespace and online application for the website building. The two major parts of the deliverables were content curation and designing. Can we move to the next slide, please? To make the best of the opportunity and to improve the quality, following aspects were focused upon. The idea was to gauge the client's stakeholders and assess the demands from this platform to serve them aptly and adequately. The visitors can be largely divided into following sections: the volunteers, associated partners, neighborhood resident, and the potential funders. As the first task of the effort was focusing on the organization, the scope and objectives, and representing it all adequately, we needed structuring all the information available. Second, to establish the credibility of the organization and to win the trust, it was important to quantify all the information to engage the viewer and retain their connection. It's important to share stories, and thus having the present voices and experiences up there on the website was another deliverable as a part of the segment. We did try our best to make the website beautiful and crisp by improving the user interface and the user experience, and then making sure that we have the client's takeaways set right by creating the features for volunteering, donating, sharing feedback, suggestion, and reaching out to the team for partnerships. Ultimately, we at the end on the note on having the platform for long-term and systematic changes to have mindful solution of the waste management apart from the drives that they propose to create. I request the Instagram team.
Great, thanks, Shubi. So yeah, the next deliverable was working on their social media content and their Instagram. The clients had asked, they were hoping for their Instagram to be a little bit more interactive. They've, again, with limited capacity, it's pretty impressive how much they run their Instagram already as is, but they were posting a lot of just like event notifications and space for that. And so they were looking for a bit more of an educational campaign. So that's what we tried to do here. We ran with a myth, fact, and fix campaign, and that we have a series of three with many different types of myths, facts, and fixes regarding sanitation and waste. And when we showed it to them, this was a great learning curve for us. It was a bit of a struggle, I think, making it because like me personally, like I've never been to Bushwick, like I'm not part of that community and I'm not part of that culture. And so it was kind of a bit going in blind with the type of myths and facts and fixes that we were proposing, because we want to make sure that they're tailored correctly to the community and that the community can be receptive to that. So, talking to Kristen and Nicole about that was super helpful. And we were able to do some edits and make final deliverables with this. So as you can see on the screen, this is an example of one we changed. Originally, we had a myth about car litter not being harmful, when in fact, car litter can often, escape the car and end up on the streets. And they let us know that, Bushwick isn't really a vehicle-driven city, a vehicle-motivated city. So, instead, cigarette butts are a huge issue in their cleanups. So we were able to kind of adapt and change, and I'm really excited to see these educational campaigns on their social media.
Last but not least, we have our sticker campaign. Since the midterm, we have greatly benefited from the situational analysis conducted by our teammate Ben. From there, as we can see here, we've outlined the specific areas that are have the most concentrated sources of litter, and with that, we went forward to target 12 to 15 different businesses and organizations that either have the most amount of litter or have the opportunity and potential for a storefront with tree bed care that we could potentially work with. And then with that, one of our recent developments has been to create a phone call outreach script, and then that'll be a quick script that incorporates CBI's principles and marketing strategy to approach these businesses with a cold call. Next slide, please. And then with that, we went forward to establish our CBI values, and then that's by creating our pledge. We went through a couple of drafts with Chris and Nicole, and through a couple of revisions, I think we narrowed it down to our mission, strategy, and commitment. And then ultimately, we wanted to communicate the principles of transparency, accountability, and collaboration, all with the purpose of integrating our community and the efforts to create a litter-free culture. And last but not least, within the pledge, we are incentivizing the partnerships. That's going to be with providing the benefits of social media marketing through both the newsletter, Instagram, and also, and more importantly, it's a beautifying of the storefronts. And as we can see here on the bottom right, that's an actual, that's going to be our first business, and we're really excited about it. We should be cold calling them within the next week or two. And this is the ideal sort of storefront that we would like to approach. So there will be two options. We could either plant flower beds if it has a protected area, as we can see here. And if it doesn't have a flower bed area and it's just a tree, what we'll do, and it's a more feasible option, will be to maintain the actual tree bed. And that's the sticker campaign.
Overall, we had a great time working with the Clean Bushwick Initiative. It really helped us, step away from our typical classroom work, and it was great working with such a successful community organization. Happy to take any questions.
Phenomenal job, team. I do have one question for you. By chance, did you guys happen to speak with the Parks Department to see if they were currently managing any of the flower beds, or specifically if there were any type of species that they recommended to be planted in that area, just to make sure that no invasive species would be introduced to the community?
Yeah, so the Clean Bushwick Initiative and the Parks Department, they're partnered together, so they do work together. The flowers are donated from the Parks Department, I believe, and then also the Parks Department also runs a tree stewardship program where they have volunteers train themselves to learn how to take care of the trees and how to take care of these flower beds.
Amazing, thank you, and good job to the team.
Thanks.
I had a question as well. Great job, guys. That was a really fascinating presentation, and it sounds like you managed a lot of different pieces to one project at once. So great job. And I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit more about, it sounds like you were lucky enough to have one team member who was able to be in Bushwick and be your sort of eyes on the ground, but how you managed the remote nature of this project while remaining sort of sensitive and clued into what's going on in Bushwick and being aware of the problems that are there. It sounds tough.
Yeah, like the issue in Bushwick, it's been reported for like many years. So there's a lot of articles, videos, news articles about the situation. We've also been having great communication with our client, Nicole and Kristen. So they're always there to answer any questions that we have. Yeah, half our team are in New York, so that was great as well.
And I would say to anybody who's in New York this weekend and they do want to volunteer with them, they're having another Earth Day event this weekend coming up on the 18th in Bushwick. So you can check out their website, which Shubi did a great job on, and find out more information.
Amazing. Ben, do you mind dropping the link in the chat for everybody? Hopefully we could get a good turnout at the event.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Great job, team. That's really exciting. And yeah, I agree with Lisa. That'd be great to get a group of us to go. Let's move on to Zero Waste Daniel.
Awesome. Give me 1 second. Okay, can you guys see my screen okay?
Yep, we're good.
Cool. Awesome. So hi, everyone. We are Zero Waste Daniel. I'm sure some of you are familiar from the midterm, but if you're not, Zero Waste Daniel is a clothing line, and that's Daniel on our left-hand side here. That's his husband, Mario, his business partner as well. And they basically upcycle dead stock fabric into their clothing line. And so just as a refresher in terms of what they asked us to work on with regard to the Net Impact project, is they really wanted to understand how they could all encompass grow their online sales organically. And so through that, they asked us to do a social media audit, an SEO audit, a website communications audit, a website user experience audit, and also kind of highlight where there are market opportunities to grow. So a lot of different moving pieces here, some of which we spoke about on the midterm, but we tried to kind of design this project for new information that we learned and what we're ultimately recommending to them. So now I'll hand it off to Melissa, who was part of the social media audit team, to kind of share some of the key findings and the key recommendations that we're moving forward with.
Hi, everyone. So we found a variety of things that they could be doing to increase their social media presence and involve consumers. So we realized that a lot of their content mix was just TikToks and Reels and not a lot of customers using their products. So we encouraged them to start using the hashtag Zero Waste Daniel and Zero Waste Daniel style in order to get followers to post photos in their attire so they can just gain more attraction. And we found that a lot of people like recognition from local businesses on social media. So we definitely encouraged user-generated content to be posted on their feed. We also found that there is a zero waste community on Pinterest that posts a lot. So we encouraged them to get a Pinterest account and start a Pinterest shop, which would automatically link to their website so users can shop what they're posting. We encourage LinkedIn for Business so they can post when they're doing podcasts, when articles are being written about them, if anybody has any questions. Daniel talked a lot about that. They get a lot of emails from students always asking them questions about the fashion industry and being zero waste. So we thought that would be a great place to just put everything in one platform. They didn't have their Instagram shop linked, so we definitely recommended that so users can shop directly off of their Instagram. And we encourage them to post more videos about tips to being zero waste. So that would increase people saving those videos, which would increase their visibility on Instagram due to the algorithm.
Cool. Now we'll hand it off to Nat to speak about the user experience study we conducted.
Yeah, so as we mentioned in the midterm briefing, we wanted to help inform a potential website redesign using information from a user experience study. So we were actually able to set up a virtual UX study, and we had 6 participants. They logged into Zoom and they took us through the process of searching for and then mock purchasing a mask on both the Zero Waste Daniel website as well as a comparable competitor's website. And we asked a few questions based on their experience. So some of the key themes that came up while we did this study were, first, ensuring that any website pop-ups were value added, like for example, asking for an email address, which then would send a coupon code. And secondly, having an easily navigable website where you can click back to product categories or other pages. So with these takeaways, we're recommending that they reformat their pop-up to add value or just remove it, and include breadcrumbs to improve site navigation, like is shown in the red box in the image to the left. And that just gives users a clearer vision of where they are within the website framework, and that allows for a better overall experience.
Awesome. And now we will hand it over to Alexandra, who worked on revenue optimization and finding opportunities to increase the revenue.
Yes, thank you. So we did a deep dive of revenue pricing in general. We found that the masks actually started in 2020, but became one of their top sellers and actually made up 69% of the year-to-year revenue growth. And this was one of the few items that are actually under $100. Their prices ranged and it tended to be around 90 upwards to 250, even 400. So with the mask bundle being actually their best selling unit, we recommended that they expand their accessories options, such as bandanas and other hair accessories, and having them as a bundle under 60 or about $60, and to give people the opportunity to be able to take something back with them without having to spend over $100. So it provides them more affordable opportunity and keeping a better price point.
Yeah, and they, just for context too, outside of like the scope of the project, they also kind of encouraged us to think creatively about like new ideas for products and things along those lines. So Alexandra did a great job of kind of taking that ambiguous topic and kind of solidifying into like some concrete things that they can move forward with to increase their revenue with the product they already have, which is awesome. So next, we just kind of wanted to give you an idea of how we structured our deliverables specifically. So as you know, we work as all of the groups here in the Net Impact semester. There were a lot of different topics, and we really tried to figure out. Sorry about that. We really tried to figure out like how should we structure this, and they asked us for a long form detailed report and also a step-by-step guide on how to increase online sales. And so what we kind of boiled it down to is a lot of us in this group weren't necessarily experts on SEO or social media or anything like that. Luckily, we had Hillary, who was an expert in market opportunities, which was awesome. But for those of us who weren't, we really did our best to kind of research what the best practices were in the beginning of our project, and then basically move forward into the next step of saying, okay, now we know what the best practice is. How is Zero Waste Daniel doing against that best practice? And that kind of led us to that audit analysis, which was the bulk of what we were asked to do, and then ultimately the recommendation. And then kind of the most important thing was we then kind of thought about it in their shoes. Okay, well, in order to implement this recommendation, like what do they need to do immediately? They don't have a ton of resources on their team, so we really needed to explicitly state, in order to implement this, you need to do X, Y, and Z. So all of this is baked out step by step in the detailed report into each social media, web, SEO sections. And then what we did was we literally just stripped that detailed report and took out the steps to implement and basically put it into the step-by-step guide. So we're going to kind of present them with the detailed report with all of the information front to end, but then they're able to kind of use the shorter step-by-step guide to say, okay, now that we understand why we need to do everything, we can now just kind of check the box and make sure we do everything to implement the recommendations. So that's how we kind of thought about that. And then we also kind of are moving forward. This wasn't, I don't know, originally planned, but we are going to spend an hour and a half with them presenting a final presentation. And this is where we're kind of going to explain some of those high level things that would be good to kind of have a discussion about before reading the detailed report. So for example, Nat and I worked on the website audit and obviously the UX study and things like that. And we redesigned a few mock-ups of like, okay, this is what your website mobile experience will look like if you implement everything. And so we're going to kind of walk them through that and start to introduce them to some of those aspects before they read the detailed report. So that's pretty much it on our end. But thank you so much, and let us know if you have any questions.
I have a question. So you talked about social media, and you mentioned, I forget who mentioned, looking into like the algorithms. And I was just wondering, how that research went and where you found that information and like how that kind of tied into your project.
I can.
And that's Mia, yeah.
Yeah, I can speak to that. We actually met with someone who works at Facebook and does marketing on Facebook and Instagram. So that was very helpful. He gave us a lot of great insight. And then really just reading through a lot of different like social media strategy websites. Instagram does keep that algorithm stuff kind of secret. So it's kind of different people coming up with what they think is the algorithm. And what we found is that saves were the most important for the algorithm, then followed by shares. So we tried to focus our strategy on ways to get those actions on their posts.
Very cool. Thank you.
Jessica?
Yeah, I had a question. This is really interesting. I like their brand a lot. I think it's a really good one. Just a quick Google search of their website. Their prices are pretty high. I think that they're not designer label, but did you ever talk about a pricing decrease or just pricing structure at all with them?
I can kind of start.
Sorry.
Yeah. Well, I'll start, and Alexandra is the expert on this, so I'll hand it over to her. This was something we were curious about as a team, and they kind of made it clear that they have done rounds of pricing optimization exercises. And so they've been aware of that. They've toggled left and right with different prices. So that's kind of, they kind of actually said to us point blank, like, we're not going to change the price. It's like perfect as it is right now. So Alexandra, with that being said, feel free to take it from here with your work.
So I think it was one thing that I honed in on in the beginning, but they were very adamant about how they've already done a lot of this back and forth. And that's why we did go with recommending focusing on the bundles to at least give people the option to take something affordable home. And then separate from this presentation, we also suggested to set specific limits if they're not selling product. They did tell us that they would sell it or they would take it off of the website, but one of the specific recommendations at least, is to keep a closer eye on what's selling in the cycle.
I just want to say great job to Alexandra and the team for coming up with a creative solution to offer the client, because you want to be cognizant of those things that they want to, really, that they're really steadfast for, keeping as a key part of their brand, whether that be, sort of like a higher priced point garment or, whatever it is. And so just great job for that creativity there for the accessory bundles. I think that's a great alternative.
Thanks, Lisa. And I see another question. I apologize. I want to say your name correctly. I think you might be on mute. So sorry.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, so I just had a follow-up question to that. The price question, like what is the major component due to which their prices are so high?
So the actual products themselves are it's done through a process called re-roll, and the individual pieces actually have to be sewn together. So it is a lot of manual labor, and that they also have the cost of being in New York, and it does align with different sustainability brands within Manhattan as well. It was actually a little bit less expensive to the competitor that we compared it to in the website study. So I know the hesitation for the pricing too, but being, I guess, designers, like a lot of effort goes into it as well.
Thank you.
Also, just one more thing that I thought was really interesting that I learned was being at this higher price point does kind of place them in this area where consumers will get like a one-of-a-kind piece. And that sort of aligns better actually with the zero waste model that they're going for. So instead of being able to produce like 70 of these pieces at a lower price point, the higher price point kind of signifies that this is something that like you'll take and cherish. And I don't know if that's like as represented in the like data that we found, but as just a personal note, I think that that's an interesting thing and a way for them to align better with their zero waste kind of brand model.
Thank you, as long as that works commercially for them. Thank you.
Yep.
All right, cool. So hey everyone, I'm Justin. I'm the project manager for the Closed Loop Partners team. And before we get started, I just wanted to give a special thank you to Liz, our project director. She's helped us every step of the way and definitely reassured my confidence when things got a little bit bumpy. And thank you to Rose, Kat, and Juliana for putting together another great semester for Simani. And finally, my team for all the hard work you guys put in for this to come to fruition. Although we are not done yet, we are actually presenting to our client in about a week and a half. So let's dive into it real quick, just as a refresher from what we presented in our midterm. Our client is Closed Loop Partners Venture Capital team, who invest in early stage companies that build the circular economy. And we worked with the associate and director of the fund to deliver an investment thesis based on insights we gathered about the circular home. And so today I'll first go over the project scope, talk about some milestones, how we accomplished them, key findings, our investment thesis, and finally some challenges we had along the way. Initially, the client asked us to conduct a qualitative study of the entire US demographic, but given the timeline of our project, they decided a couple weeks in that they wanted us to focus on Gen Zs, and more specifically undergrad and recent grads aged like 18 to 24, which for them is a lesser known group. And we broke down our research by interventions in these 5 sectors: food, personal care and hygiene, apparel, e-waste, and home appliances and furniture. And all these sectors align with the themes of their current portfolio, but we wanted to uncover new layers and add more color from market insights. So the bulk of our project was designing and collecting survey data in order to understand what these young college kids really value. So as soon as we defined the project scope, we started making survey questions, and this was somewhat challenging since we wanted to ask the right questions that would best capture their perception and willingness to contribute. But thankfully, we were able to get some help from both Danielle, who's the VP of Sustainability at L'Oreal, and Selchuk, an econ professor at Columbia. So by the end of February, our survey was live, and initially we're just sending it out to friends and family to get feedback. And after incorporating them, we finally reached triple digits around the time of our midterm. And that's when we decided we really want to ramp it up in order to have enough data to provide actionable insights. And so in week 7, we launched our survey through Facebook and Instagram ads. And that's when we started to really get some results. And I think it's crazy how with just $3 a day, you could reach close to 1,000 people. And in week 9, which was just a couple of weeks ago, we started doing our focus groups, and the focus group slots really filled up, I think, in a day. So it was relieving to see such willing and enthusiastic participants. Oh, sorry, I think I went past one, okay. And finally, we stopped collecting survey data, reaching 265 respondents, and started our analysis. So as mentioned, we designed a survey to gauge the perception and willingness to contribute to the circular home. And some of the questions we asked were like, on a scale of 1 to 10, rate your willingness to take action in your home to become more sustainable. What do you prioritize when making purchasing decisions? Is it price, quality, convenience, sustainability? Are you familiar with your municipalities' recycling rules. And the main question was, what product area are you most interested in becoming more sustainable in? And we really tried to reach every Gen Z out there, and our strategy was through social media ads and emailing as many universities as possible. And I personally pestered all my friends to fill it out. And then we did our focus groups, and the purpose of these was to add more color to our survey results and hone in on some of the motivations behind their choices. And kind of like the Zero Waste Daniel team, we kind of simulated a shopping experience and walked through their thought process when buying products. And for the past week, we've consolidated our results and started highlighting trends, identifying commonalities, and what impact that could have from an investment standpoint. And so what we found from our research is that food was the area most people were interested in becoming more sustainable in, and found that 76% of respondents threw out food waste with trash, which is kind of alarming. About half of food respondents valued locally made and packaging waste as the #1 determinant in making purchasing decisions. And overall, across all respondents, price is the #1 determinant, followed by quality, durability, and availability and convenience. Oh, and finally, sustainable packaging is valued, but not more than price. And again, price seems to be a recurring theme here, which kind of makes sense because these are college students living on a tight instant ramen type budget. And from this, we have our investment thesis, which, by the way, is just an abridged version. But essentially, we're hypothesizing that Gen Zs are interested and willing to develop sustainable habits around food waste, but are hindered by a lack of accessibility, whether that be composting sites, the know-how, budget. And therefore, investments in the circular food space should focus on affordable and convenient at-home food waste management, which has the potential for a high return on investment, since the food waste management industry is currently worth $36 billion and projected to grow at a compounded annual rate of 6.6%. And one prospective startup we found that kind of fits this mold is Lomi by Pella. And I don't know if Kivia, if you're online, if you want to talk more about it.
Sure. So this is just one of the prospective investments. We're still doing more research on the startups that are providing at-home food waste management solutions. So Pila is a phone case company. Some of you might know they do compostable phone cases, and they have branched out recently to create this countertop composter. So you can just put in your kitchen scraps in there, and even bioplastic, compostable plastics, like compostable spoons, etc. You can dump it in there, and then they can process it to either compost, so nutritious compost for your garden, or a more condensed version of landfill waste. So they make it really compact. I think it was like 80% lighter, for you to just dump it in your landfill waste if you don't have a garden that the compost would be useful for. They're still on Kickstarter. I don't think they're available for purchase, and I haven't found their pricing yet, but this is the type of solutions that we're looking for this investment thesis.
Thank you for that, Kivia. And finally, moving on to our last slide. Some of the challenges we faced, as mentioned, it took a couple weeks to finalize the scope and agree upon expectations and what we're actually able to deliver. And on a similar vein, the client initially said something like 100 participants or 100-person sample size would be good enough. But I think more is better, right? And a lot of our survey respondents are like you and I, who are environmentally woke, so to speak. So I think given another month or so, I feel like we could have covered a wider audience and provide stronger insights. And thank you. And team, feel free to jump in for any questions.
Great job, guys. I know this was a really interesting project for lots of people. And one thing that I was interested in that came up throughout your process was there was an issue with you had to define sustainability and sort of a lot of these terms that a lot of us use every day, and what that, and can mean different things to different survey participants, especially people who maybe aren't as familiar with the space. And I'm just wondering if you could talk a little bit about those challenges and how you manage that while keeping a survey short and light and easy.
Yeah, so I think for us, the important thing was to have like a common definition across, so that the answers wouldn't have any biases. And in our focus group, there was a guy who was kind of skeptical about everything and kept asking us to go into more detail on what it actually means to be sustainable. But I think that helped us to really hone in on what it means. And for us, in this case, it was things that would contribute to the circular economy.
In some questions, we also intentionally left it a bit vague. We want to let, because we're finding out their perceptions on sustainability, right? So we are interested in knowing what they define as sustainable. So for example, we asked them in the survey, what do you think is the most sustainable for food packaging? And they were able to rank things like recycled packaging, plastic-free, package-free, compostable, biodegradable. So that's also one of the questions, one of the objectives we had.
Can I just ask quick what the result of that was? Because I know there's so much confusion around all of those terms.
The result for which question?
Just like which people, like the ranking question that Kivia was just talking about.
Oh, okay, wait.
Yeah, I think it was that it packaged free, then biodegradable, and then compostable was kind of the like average results of those rankings. So I think obviously like having no packaging is going to be the most sustainable option, but I think that's what's been really interesting about now thinking forward to some of the sourcing opportunities for investments with closed loop is that it's kind of hard to sell food that isn't packaged, right? And so that's why we've kind of tailored the investment thesis to be more about composting, because there seemed to be a lot of concern and interest around food waste. So, outside of just packaging, right? Like Justin shared the number, about 76 or 78% of survey respondents saying that they throw away their food waste in the trash. So we think that that's kind of a viable avenue to advise closed loop to further engage in.